It's been a while since I've spoken about Arsenal, but after yesterday's performance, I cannot ignore how genuinely magnificent Arsenal are at the moment. They are the most exciting, the most entertaining, and the most informed team in the Premier League at the moment, and therefore they are the favourites to win the Premier League. I genuinely believe that. We're halfway through the season and they are 8 points clear of Manchester City. And the best part is they've pretty much played every difficult team there is to play in the league and they've passed the test apart from Manchester United at Old Trafford. Yesterday's performance in the North London Derby was a portrait of two completely contrasting stories. On the one hand, it was a portrait of excellence. It was a portrait of a team overachieving. It was a portrait of a team hitting heights that even Arsenal fans didn't believe were possible so soon. On the other hand, it's a portrait of a team that really looks lethargic, a team that really looks melancholy, a team that is just going through the motions and looks defeated. And the worst part about Spurs is I don't watch Spurs every week. Arsenal are a team that I watch a lot, almost every week, provided they're not playing at the same time as United. I watch a lot of Chelsea. I have watched a lot more of Liverpool, and I've watched a lot more of Man City than I have of Spurs. Spurs are the team in the traditional top six who I haven't watched that much. But their performances are the most predictable because their performances at the beginning of the season, when everybody thought they were going to go in a title charge, it was so obvious that it wasn't sustainable. And now we're starting to see the evidence of that playing out before our eyes. But we'll talk about Spurs in a moment. Let's talk about Arsenal. Saka was brilliant. He went on so many marauding runs yesterday and was an absolute thorn in the side of Antonio Conte and his men. And the sign that Saka is in great form is even when he has a simple pass, even when his fullback is making an overlap or Martin Odegaard is tracking into the half space and he has a very simple pass, he won't take the pass. He will make things more difficult for himself and he will take the onus of beating a man on. That is a sign of a winger who is in good form and is feeling very confident when they're selfish enough to say, you know what, I've got the ball and I can take this man on. I don't need to pass to my teammate. I don't need to go for the predictable pass in the overlap just so you can put in a cross. I'm going to get past this man and I'm going to put in the cross myself. And that's in fact how he scored his first goal. Essentially, now Hugo Lloris made an absolute brain fart of a mistake, but still, Saka took the shot. Saka put himself in a position to benefit from that mistake. If you don't go to the casino, you'll never win anything type thing. So he got lucky, yes, but he went down to the casino, if you get what I mean. Martin Odegaard, he was brilliant yesterday as well. He was genuinely magnificent. And the crazy thing about Martin Odegaard is this is a player that I had written off. When Arsenal signed Martin Odegaard, I said something to the effect of he won't live up to the potential. Look at his career at Real Madrid. He's been an absolute flop. Why would Real Madrid give you Martin Odegaard virtually uncontested and you know, just as easily as they did if he was all that, if he was going to be this great player in the future? And I guess it goes to show two things. One, that I was obviously wrong and I look like an idiot now. But two, how talented is Real Madrid's youth team that they were able to just let go of Martin Odegaard? I guess it could be a bad judgment on their part, but there's a part of me that still feels like Martin Odegaard wouldn't actually start on the Real Madrid team currently, just because of the abundance of talent they would have. Like, he wouldn't start each and every single game. I'm not saying he'd be terrible. I'm just saying Real Madrid are the Champions League winners. I'm just saying, like, Martin Odegaard isn't a guaranteed starter in that team. That just goes to show how brilliant Madrid are. But anyways, we're talking about Arsenal. He's been brilliant for Arsenal this season. Even when he hasn't had his most productive of games, even when he hasn't been scoring, assisting, or being the focal point of Arsenal's attack, he's still so clean and tidy on the ball. He's still so reliable. His footwork is so good and his improvisation, his ability to win free kicks deep in the opposition half is so pivotal for Arsenal. The fact that he's a threat for defenders and he just keeps defenders occupied is enough for me. It's enough for me. And there's never moments when I watch Arsenal where I think to myself, ooh, Odegaard's made a mistake there. Of course, he's made mistakes, but like those mistakes don't jump out to me because you always do something a minute later where it's completely erased. And that is a sign of a player who really is in a scary vein of form. I genuinely think he's one of the best midfielders in the Premier League at the moment on form. On ability, different conversation for a different day. Let's talk about Martinelli. Because Martinelli yesterday, I think two moments stood out in yesterday's game. There was probably a lot of moments where he dribbled past a couple of players, but it didn't really lead to anything because Arsenal couldn't score. But for me, the moments that stand out, two moments, both involving Eddie Nketiah. The first moment is where the ball comes to him and he is on the right side of Spurs' box. And he scoops it over his own head into open space. And Nketiah traps it, controls it, and misses the one-on-one with Lloris. Because essentially, at that point, it's a one-on-one. Nketiah just needs to get past Lloris and it's a goal. There's no one else contesting him. There's no one tugging his shirt. There's no one making that shot a lot more difficult than it needs to be. Nketiah should have buried that, and that should have been an assist for Martinelli. A beautifully improvised, unorthodox assist. The second one, very similar, except he's on the other side of the box now. The ball comes in and the cross is overhit. Nketiah misses it. It lands just behind Martinelli. And instead of turning around and chasing it down like a loose ball and basically just trying to recycle possession, he improvises and backheels it into the path of the box. But nobody reads the play. Nobody is quick enough on their feet to say, oh, let me take advantage of this, and Spurs get away with the ball. That's another moment in the game where I thought to myself, oh my word, this kid deserves something. He is such a beautiful flair player to watch. To me, Martinelli is a flair player, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a compliment. He's a player who can just, on a flip of a switch, just turn up. He can just turn up. He can do things that you can't plan. He can do things that you can't really coach. It's just got to do with the creativity of the player and the ability to see an opportunity to go for something crazy in the heat of the moment, in the heat of a North London derby, away from home, in front of a hostile crowd, in a sea of white, a sea of hostility, a sea of negativity where everybody is rooting for your downfall, and he still has the gall, the audacity to go for stuff like that. That is a sign of not only a team, but an individual that looks scary and is in a scary vein of form. Anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about Ramsdale, man, because he deserves a shout as well. Ramsdale was brilliant yesterday. Absolutely brilliant. He was saving Arsenal in that second half, because you have to realize, if you didn't watch the game for whatever reason, Spurs turned up in the second half. They really did. And I think it's in part because Arsenal already had the game won and they didn't need to do anything silly. So Arsenal were quite clearly just trying to manage the game and see it out. That's what a team that's going for a title should be doing. And I applaud Arsenal for that. But they really did let Spurs back into the game. All of a sudden, Kulusevski was looking very spicy. All of a sudden, Kulusevski was dribbling past one or two Arsenal players and just couldn't get past the third. All of a sudden, there were moments where the ball was going in and Harry Kane, Son, they almost had opportunities to bury. All of a sudden, Spurs was getting shots on the edge of the box. Son had a shot, Kane had a shot, and Ramsdale saved both of them. Brilliant saves from Ramsdale. He was probably Arsenal's man of the match, if I'm being honest. Many people might disagree with that, but for me, just across the 90 minutes, ignoring the goals and ignoring the assists, just analysing the performance across the 90 minutes, for me, Ramsdale was Arsenal's most consistent player. Because that second half, he was busy and he kept Arsenal in that game. If Spurs score one goal, the complexion of that game changes quite a lot. Quite a lot indeed. But anyways, let's move on. We've spoken enough about Arsenal. Let's speak about this man, Antonio Conte, because there was a point where Antonio Conte was linked with a move to Manchester United. It was around the time that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was about to get sacked. And the irony is, Conte at Spurs reminds me of Ole at United. Certain players continue to start regardless of form, regardless of how bad they've been, because Conte clearly just doesn't fancy certain players on the bench. And as a manager, you have that right. But the thing is, it only really kind of is excusable when you're winning. If you're winning trophies or you look like you're making progress and you're making the steps towards winning trophies, nobody really cares that you're favorites. Like if Ten Hag doesn't drop Casemiro after a bad game, but we're still in the top 4 at the end of the season, most United fans won't really care. Plus it's Casemiro. You know what I mean? It's the same with Conte. If Spurs were winning and if Spurs were in a good vein of form, I don't think anybody would really care that he's starting the likes of Emerson Royale. Now, I know Emerson Royale didn't start in yesterday's game. It was Sessegnon, but generally, Royale has started the season, and a lot of Tottenham fans that I know hate Emerson Royale, and they've absolutely grown to hate a lot of other Spurs players because Conte starts them regardless of form. That's only the first part that I have wrong with Conte. The second part is that he doesn't seem to be very innovative and experimental with his team shapes and his tactics. He seems to pretty much be rinsing and repeating at the moment. And maybe that's lazy analysis from Spurs. Maybe I'm wrong. But again, that's what it looks like from the outside looking in. And I don't watch Spurs that often. I'm going to be honest. I watch Arsenal a lot. I obviously watch Manchester United every match day. I watch a lot more of Chelsea. I watch a lot more of Liverpool. But the reason why I watch those teams and I watch Manchester City more than Spurs is because Spurs look the same every time I come back to them. it looks like nothing's changed. And I'm somebody who likes to analyze the game. I'm not a casual football fan. I genuinely try look at team shapes. I genuinely try ask myself, why is this player standing in this position? Why does he consistently make this run? What is the manager trying to achieve? What does this team shape help them with? What are the pros and cons of it? I genuinely ask myself those questions whilst watching the game, and sometimes I take notes of things that I spot about teams. And every time I've taken notes of Spurs, it's been the same thing across the season, because they genuinely look the same, if not worse. Every time I watch Spurs, it looks like deja vu. The only difference is, instead of them coming back miraculously, now their second half FC performance and their second half FC mentality is catching up with them, just like it did under Oli. It was so obvious under Oli that we were eventually going to lose the steam. We were going to eventually lose the momentum of being able to come back in games, because it's not sustainable. At some point, you need to be able to control a game of football from minute 1 up until half time. Win the game in the first half, then just be scrappy in the second half and see it out towards the end. But Spurs can't do that. Spurs can't do that. They have no ability to manage games and stay in games and actually go ahead of games instead of going behind in games and then having to play catch up. They just can't do it. They seem to only be able to play good football when they are 2-0 down with 30 minutes to go. And it's an appalling way to approach football. It really, really is. It gets to a point with Spurs where you start to believe it's intentional. You almost start to believe it's by design, because what explanation is there for a team that only turns up in the second half? It makes no sense, at least not to the extent that Spurs are doing it. They genuinely look like United under Oli, which was a dark time. So to every Manchester United fan who didn't want Conte and who I called crazy, I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry, because I get it now. I really do get it now. Conte is a brilliant manager with a brilliant CV, but there are some aspects to his management that just wouldn't have worked out well at Manchester United. And one of them is the stubbornness, the inability to adapt and just take the L. Admit that your way of playing isn't working for the current crop of players that you have, and adapt. Meet the players halfway. Look at their strengths and weaknesses and what they bring to the table and build a system based on that, rather than your own stubborn ideology of how football should be played, knowing that the board, aka Daniel Levy, is not going to back you. Just my opinion. Anyways, I believe Arsenal are winning the league. We are at that stage in the season. Obviously, things could change dramatically over the next few weeks, and we could sit here saying Arsenal bottled it, but I don't think that's going to happen. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? Like, I don't really want Arsenal to win the league anyways, so if I'm wrong, I'll happily take that L every day of the week. I would rather another team won the league. I don't want Man City to win it because they'll do the three-peat, so it would be nice if some mystery team just went on a crazy run of form. Some team in red on the other side of Manchester just went on a crazy run of form and won the league. But anyways, it's been your boy TripleM. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace.